Okay, today we're going to be talking about quadrilaterals. Alright, so a quadrilateral is a closed figure with 4 sides and 4 angles. Maybe more specifically, a closed polygon with 4 sides and 4 angles. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of different, or a bunch of different figures, and then we're going to look at them and see if they would classify as quadrilaterals. Okay, so the first one, I can see that it has 4 sides, 4 interior angles, and all 4 sides are straight. So this is a polygon. This is a quadrilateral. Okay, the second one I can see has all the same characteristics. 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, 4 angles. This is a quadrilateral as well. Okay, this third one. Well, I could look at it as that's 1 side and that's 2 sides, so then 3 and 4, that would be 4 sides. The issue here is you can't have sides overlapping in a polygon. So this figure is not a quadrilateral. This is kind of 2 different figures together, even though you could draw it with 4 lines. It's really 2 different triangles. So this figure is not a quadrilateral. And it's not a quadrilateral because of those lines crossing right there. Okay, so now this next one, again I have 4 sides. This one actually still has 4 interior angles, even though this one is an obtuse interior angle. It still has 4 interior angles. So this one is a quadrilateral. The next one is not a quadrilateral because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. Quadrilateral has 4 sides, so that can't be a quadrilateral. The next one, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, but one of those sides is curved. So that one's not a quadrilateral either. And then the last one, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, but it only has 3 angles because 2 of those sides aren't touching. So this is not a quadrilateral either because it's an open figure. So it's not even a polygon. So looking through here, 4 sides, 4 angles. Okay, these are a few things that make something not a quadrilateral. If any of the lines cross, not a quadrilateral. If it doesn't have 4 sides, it's not a quadrilateral. If there's any curved sides, not a quadrilateral. Or if 2 of the sides don't touch, so if there's a gap, it's not a quadrilateral. Okay, so now that we know what a quadrilateral is, we need to discuss the different types of quadrilaterals. Alright, the first is just a quadrilateral. Okay, that means that all it has is the characteristics of any quadrilateral, meaning 4 sides, 4 interior angles. It's a polygon. So basically what we looked at on the last slide. Okay, it only meets the basic characteristics of a quadrilateral. Okay, next we have a quadrilateral, except these two arrows. When you have an arrow in the middle of two lines, two different lines, what that's indicating or telling you is that those two lines are parallel. So this is a quadrilateral, but there's something special about it, and that's that it has a pair of parallel sides. See, I didn't have that over here. Okay, I can have 4 sides and 4 angles, and that's a quadrilateral. But a special quadrilateral is one that has parallel sides. Okay, and this type of quadrilateral is called a trapezoid. Okay, a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly one pair of parallel sides. And this is the symbol for parallel. This is not the number 11. This says one pair of parallel sides. Okay? So a trapezoid, this shape would be a quadrilateral and a trapezoid. Okay? Because a trapezoid is a quadrilateral. But a trapezoid is a quadrilateral that has a pair of parallel sides. Alright, so next, I have another type of quadrilateral. So you can see it's kind of like a trapezoid, where I've got a pair of parallel sides, except for it's like a trapezoid when the other sides are parallel too. So this, the top and bottom are parallel, and the sides are parallel. So this is called a parallelogram. There's something else that happens. If all those lines are parallel, then I have these congruent symbols. Okay, what this means is one tick over here and one tick over here means that these two lines are congruent. They're the same length. And that they're also one arrow and one arrow means those two are parallel with each other. 2 tick marks and 2 tick marks means these two are congruent. They're the same length. And they have 2 arrows and 2 arrows because these two are parallel to each other. Okay, so a parallelogram is also a quadrilateral, because all of these are quadrilaterals. Okay, but this is a quadrilateral with both pairs of sides being parallel. And with both sides, both pairs of sides also being congruent. So a parallelogram, the top and bottom are parallel and congruent, and both sides are parallel and congruent. Alright, so next, you probably recognize this one. Okay, so now again, I have a parallelogram here, except I have a parallelogram with angles of 90 degrees. Okay, and this is called a rectangle. Okay, notice the top and the bottom are still parallel and congruent, just like a parallelogram. The sides are still parallel and congruent, just like a parallelogram. But unlike a parallelogram, a rectangle has to have 90-degree angles. Okay, so a rectangle is just a parallelogram with 4 right angles. So I can see the top and the bottom are parallel, and the top and the bottom are congruent. The two sides are parallel and also congruent. Alright, then we have another shape, another quadrilateral. It looks kind of like a parallelogram. Except all four sides are congruent. Okay, well, when all four sides are congruent, this is called a rhombus. Okay, a rhombus is a parallelogram with all four sides congruent. So that also means that the two sides are parallel and the top and bottom are parallel. Okay, so a rhombus is just like a parallelogram, except for all the sides are the same length. And then we have the last type of quadrilateral. You can see it looks close to a rectangle, but also close to a rhombus. It's really kind of a mixture of the two. Okay, it has right angles, but it also has all four congruent sides. So it has right angles like a rectangle, but it has all congruent sides like a rhombus. This is called a square. Okay, a square is a parallelogram with four congruent sides and four right angles. Okay, you can see a rhombus is a parallelogram with four congruent sides, and the square is a parallelogram with four congruent sides and four right angles. So a square is really just a rhombus with right angles. So you are going to have to be able to classify these shapes. If I give you a shape that looks like this, you're going to have to know that this is a rhombus. Okay, or a shape like this, you're going to have to know that it's a trapezoid or a rectangle or any of these, or maybe it's none of these other ones and all it is a quadrilateral. Okay, but there's a nice flow of how these are created. A quadrilateral has no parallel sides. Okay, once you get one pair of parallel sides, it's now a trapezoid. Once you get two, it's now a parallelogram. At that point, that's when you can start straightening things up. Okay, if you take your parallelogram and make it 90 degrees, you get a rectangle. If you take your parallelogram and make all the sides congruent, you get a rhombus. If you take your rectangle and make all the sides congruent, you get a square. Or if you take your rhombus and make all the angles 90 degrees, you also get a square. Okay, so there's kind of a flow here from quadrilateral to trapezoid to parallelogram to rectangle to square, and then from parallelogram to rhombus to square. Okay, so if you kind of think of it that way, it's all based on how many parallel lines. One parallel line, trapezoid. Two parallel lines, it's got to be one of these. If it's got right angles, it's got to be a rectangle or square. If it doesn't, it's got to be a rhombus or parallelogram. If it's got all four congruent sides, it's got to be a rhombus or a square. If it doesn't, it's got to be a parallelogram or a rectangle. So you're kind of just asking your questions about the shape. How many parallel sides? How many congruent sides? And then you can figure out which shape it is. Now, other than just identifying the shapes, you're also going to have to be able to calculate the interior angles. Okay? So the first thing I want you to notice is, well, this is a quadrilateral. It's got four sides, four interior angles. Okay? It does not meet any other classification. It doesn't have any parallel lines. Okay, so it's just a regular quadrilateral. This is any quadrilateral. Okay? If I kind of cut this quadrilateral in half, I get two not right triangles, but two triangles. Okay? Now, a lot of you may remember that the interior angles of a triangle all add up to 180 degrees. So, if a quadrilateral is made up of two triangles, then how much do you think all the angles inside of a quadrilateral add up to be? 360, because 180 plus 180 is 360. So if you add all the interior angles of any quadrilateral, it equals 360. Okay, so here is a quadrilateral. We've got an angle of 65 degrees, 124 degrees, x degrees, which means I don't know this angle, so I'm going to have to find it, and 2x degrees. Okay, so I don't know this one either. I do know that this one's twice as big as that one, though, since this one's x and that one's 2x. But that's all I know. Okay, we are going to have to be able to find these missing angles. Now, if I'm only missing one number, then that's pretty easy, because I can just add them up to 360. When I'm missing more than one, or maybe I have some kind of variable expression in, then I have to use a little algebra. But still, I do the same thing. Because didn't we say all the angles add up to 360? So all of these angles have to add up to 360. That's all I'm going to write. Okay? This plus this plus this plus this equals 360. So I have 124 plus 65 plus 2x plus x. See, all I did was add all four angles together. Now, did I actually add them together? No, I just wrote down I'm going to add them together. Okay? And what is this going to equal? Well, I don't really know what this equals, but I know when I add all the interior angles together, I always get 360, as long as it's a quadrilateral. And since this is a quadrilateral, this has got to equal 360, because it always equals 360. So now I just have an algebraic equation, and we can solve algebraic equations. Okay, so I'm combining like terms. 124 plus 65 is 189. 2x plus x is 3x. So I have 189 plus 3x equals 360. That's a two-step equation. How do I get rid of the 189? I subtract 189 from both sides, and I get 3x equals 171. Well, how do I get rid of the times 3? I divide by 3. So that gives me x equals 57. See, even when we're doing geometry and angles, we still have to use our algebra skills. Right? So we've just solved an algebraic equation to find a missing value for an angle for this quadrilateral. Okay, but I'm not quite done, because all I did was find x. Well, up here I was missing two angles. Well, this angle is just x, so I found that one. That one's just 57 degrees, right? Because it was x degrees, so 57 degrees. But over here, this one wasn't 57, was it? No, it was 2x. Well, since x is 57, that says 2 times 57. So this angle is 114 degrees, because 2 times 57 is 114. So once I found x, I still had to plug it in to find my angles. And now I've found all the missing angles. And if you notice, if I add all four of these numbers together, I get 360 degrees. Okay, so now for a little practice. Okay, first you're going to classify the quadrilateral, and then you're going to find the missing angles. Alright, so over here, you're given three of the angles, 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and 100 degrees, and you're just missing one, x degrees. So you need to classify this quadrilateral and find the missing angle. Over here, you're given that all four sides are congruent, and then you're also given that this angle is x and this angle is 2x. Just a little hint before you start number 2, you may want to think about the relationship between the angles across from each other. What does this angle tell you about that angle, and what does this angle tell you about that angle? Alright, so go ahead and try to classify and find the missing angles, and then we'll look at them together. Alright, so for the first one, I can see that this is a trapezoid because it has one pair of parallel sides. Okay, the left and the right are not parallel, but the top and the bottom are. So this is a trapezoid. Alright, then I've got to find the missing angle. Well, what do I know about all quadrilaterals? All four angles add up to 360. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add up all all four angles, excuse me. So I've got 100 plus 60 plus 70 plus x, and that should equal 360. So now I can solve. Well, 100 plus 60 plus 70 is 230. So 230 plus x equals 360. Now I can solve my one-step equation. Subtract 230 from both sides, and I get that x equals 130. So this angle up here is 130 degrees. And I can always check it by adding all four together and seeing that it equals 360 degrees. Alright, so for the second one. Okay, first off, I see that I've got parallel lines, two sets of them. So that lets me know I'm working with parallelograms. So it's either a parallelogram, a rectangle, a square, or a rhombus. Okay, and then I see that I have all congruent sides. So that rules out rectangle and parallelogram. So it's either a square or a rhombus. Then I see that these two angles are not the same. So if they're not the same, there's no way they're all 90 degrees, because this is x and that's 2x. So if they're not the same, then they can't all be right angles. So that rules out a square. That only leaves one thing this could be, and it's a rhombus. Okay, so before I start finding my missing angles, though, I need to know something about these other two, because I don't have any rule for adding two angles of a quadrilateral. I have to add all four of them. So what do you know about the angles that are across from each other? Okay, the angles across from each other are congruent. Okay, so if this one is x, then this one is x. Okay, that is always true for a rhombus. Okay, It's also true for a parallelogram. And a rectangle and a square. Rectangle and square is easy, though, because all four of them are same. But for all parallelograms and rhombus, the ones across from each other are congruent. So what do you think this angle is over here? Well, yep, it's the same as that other one over there, so it is 2x degrees. So really, by giving you these two angles, I actually gave you all four. Okay, so I have an x, a 2x, an x, and a 2x. So if I add all four of those angles together, I get 2x plus 2x plus x plus x. And what does that equal? Well, when it's all said and done, since it's a quadrilateral, it should equal 360. So now I can solve my equation. Well, can we combine like terms here? Yeah, that's 2x plus 2x plus 1x plus 1x. Isn't that just 6x? 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So 6x equals 360. And now I need to divide by 6 to get rid of the times 6. So I find that x equals 60. Okay, now I can't stop there though, because I have to find all the missing angles. Okay, so I know that this is 60 degrees because that was just x. And I also know that this other missing angle was 120 because it was 2 times x, or 2 times 60 is 120. But that also lets me know that this top right angle is also 60 degrees, and the top left is also 120. So at this point, you should be able to classify a quadrilateral and find a missing angle or missing angles from any quadrilateral.